Oh yeah, and I forgot, we got the SnapCon Awards. You've got a ton of nominations. I don't know how you nominate him so many times, but he's got a bunch of nominations, and one of those includes me for this podcast. So I'll at least back that one. I don't know about the other ones, but that one, yes, I will.
Thanks.
You're in those categories with a lot of big names.
The way I look at it, you know, and I talked about it on the stream the other day. It's like basically anybody who was nominated the same year that Heath Ledger was nominated as the Joker. That's kind of how I feel. Just like I'm just honored to get a nomination. And if I win anything, the one I want, no offense to you, good sir, the one I want is writer. And we'll see what happens. Yeah. You know, if it happens, woohoo. If it doesn't, go to SnapCon and drink our faces away with Super Tech God. You know, it's just something along those lines. You know, something along those lines. All right. With all that said, are you good sir?
Not yet. One sec.
So you have lied to me then.
Okay. Should be good now.
Should be good now. All right.
Yep. They're all gone.
All right.
Well, welcome in, everybody.
Just welcome in. That's all you're doing. We're not giving a.
There's people in chat. There's some people in chat like
okay.
Joe over here saying.
Do you know how hard it is to get a solid intro with you today? My God.
First time hanging out with us live for the podcast. So just welcome into that. This is not welcome into the actual intro. This is just people in chat, the people that are live with us.
You have made my editing life so incredibly difficult. You have no idea, good sir.
Good luck.
So incredibly difficult. We're being formal and saying hello to those who are here with the live recording of the chat. But now I missed the whole big, welcome type thing. And as always, I'll figure it out in post. So let's just go with it. All right. We're here. We're live. Welcome back to the Snapback podcast. You know the drill. It's guest, and then there's Default Dan, and we've got things to talk about because our world just got completely turned upside down in a variety of different ways. First off, if you're watching the video podcast, there's a very stylistic choice, I guess we could call it. Choice, not choice, maybe sort of a choice. Default Dan, why do you have a beard that looks like old man Logan Wolverine?
So I tried explaining this, but if you guys are following World Snap Federation, I keep getting accused of being, this mastermind behind what they're calling the Hip Squad, because I love Dan Hip so much, and I'm not. And I was walking out of the arena last night from the whole event, and I got jumped in the parking lot. They shaved my beard after talking about my beautiful beard on the podcast. They shaved it. The Hip Squad shaved it to make me look like Wolverine. So, I don't know.
Yeah, like they didn't shave it though. They just hacked a giant chunk where it looks like you have like this staple effect indent, because you have a giant beard. You have a good, good solid 6-inch beard, except for now only in your muzzle, which is now exclusively. It looks like a very well buzzed 7. Like it looks like a size 7. From here, I can't tell. Maybe if they jumped you, they were very selective about their. How
I had to fight them off.
We wish to get rid of this.
They started to chop it. I had to fight them off, and this is where it ended. So
you can't selectively say they started to chop it when it's that well groomed. Like did they pin you down and then give you options? Would you like to be
the rest of the beard
with a 6, a 7, or an 8 length? Like
the other sides were already super groomed, and it just kind of had a beautiful little, and then they just hacked it right down the middle. It was
this nice, it was a nice peak, and now it just I don't know. You look like an inverted handlebar, so it's now it's a choice, and
it's the old man Logan, and I've got the grays in there, to include it, but
because you're an old man, so that's fine. That's fine. You can self-admit that. Just I feel bad for Default Danielle, who's basically now confined you to the house until further notice.
True.
So
that's true.
It is what it is, though. But again, that's what. If you're listening to this on any of our podcast platforms, I heavily invite you go to YouTube. Come to my channel, It's Guest Gaming. Take a look at the video one just to see Default Dan's jumping choices, I guess.
And when you do that,
I still think it's a choice because you've left it that long.
For now.
Because people wouldn't believe you.
Leave me a comment below. If you come over to the video, leave a comment. Tell me how amazing it looks. And I
Yes.
guess it's totally wrong, and I should just keep this from here on. But let me know down below.
You do realize that your wife just created a bot to automatically now comment under our YouTube video saying, no, shave, get rid of it. No, how dare you?
She will reply to everybody's and say, you're wrong.
Every single one with just a lot of X's. Just good job. But outside of your facial hair endeavors, let's talk Marvel Snap, because it was a very eventful weekend this past weekend, and a very eventful last couple of hours, as we had a very interesting revelation from one of the devs. So I think it's going to affect several different game modes in particular. So I wanted to dive into it today and talk about both Legion, the new card coming to Marvel Snap. As always, when we're recording this on Monday nights, it'll be dropping in a couple of hours from the time that we're recording this. So by the time you hear it, chances are he has just dropped into the game. And then we'll go over the weekend where we had, Battle Arena had their second tournament over the weekend. Snap Clash had a tournament over the weekend. And it's interesting taking a look at the decks that did well and or won, because that will also in turn typically affect how COnquest goes for the next several, days until the next big tournament like ours, the Snap.fan Open on Saturday. Which I'm curious how much of that's going to overlap with your deck of the week, if any of it at all, because I don't know what you brought. But let's dive into it, because Legion's a very interesting card, and up until a few hours ago, a card that I thought was pretty much useless. I thought it was just okay, it's a joke card, it's a meme card, it's that perfect stat line where you can't be Shang-Chi'd, but you can be annoying. And that for 5 cost, I feel like he's a little bit of a concern, because he's a resource vacuum. And his effect, for those who don't know, is, on reveal, replace each other location with this one, which I think honestly should have been reworded as replace the other locations with the location this card is played at. Because it would be a little bit clearer.
Too many words.
Too many words, right words. Okay. Have you seen Magic's description? They could fit in another 7 words. All right. But it's an interesting card, because it's like, okay, cool. You got a whole bunch of Wakandan Expresses. Go ahead and throw that onto Wakandan Express, and it goes off in the other 2 locations. And then there's +2 × 2 into your hand on each card. Like, there's a couple of really cool things, and we'll talk about that at length.
Yeah.
But the big revelation comes from Glenn Jones, one of the lead developers for Second Dinner when it comes to Marvel Snap.
Yeah, and I want to kind of reveal this a little bit, because I believe you brought this up a couple weeks ago, where you brought up Legion and you said, "Oh man, Legion's going to be crazy when you hit a flooded." And I believe you had said that, and I corrected you and said, actually, what I think is going to happen is when you hit flooded, they're still going to get a whole nother turn. Because if today's interactions, when you have the locations, right, and so we're wrong on this, but this is so.
Hold on. No. I'm interrupting you, because if you're going to accuse me of being wrong, at least make sure you're quoting me correctly.
No.
First
you are correct.
I said quite the opposite.
Right. No, you're correct. So listen to what I'm saying. So you had originally said, and I corrected you in a wrong way. You had originally said that when storm came down, the location would be flooded, and you would play Legion next turn, and it would be the second phase of flooding, to where it would be the following turn after Legion, it would be flooded and locked. And I corrected you, saying I didn't think that was how it worked, because if you look at how locations work today, you look confused, but let me just finish the whole statement, and you'll realize that you're right and I'm wrong.
I said the wrong thing.
No, I'm not.
I'll pull up the damn playback and clip it into this YouTube video.
No. Just hear me out.
Let me say my own words.
No, let me finish the whole statement. I promise you're saying it right. So when I corrected you, and I miscorrected you, now that we know, when I corrected you, I said, I believe you'll have 1 extra turn, because I believe when Legion comes down, it will catch just like the locations do right now, where so you play Storm on turn 3, Turn 4, you can still play on it. If a location copies that location, it gives you one more turn on the copied location today. That's how the locations work. So when Legion dropped, I told you that's how I thought Legion would work. Legion would catch the location and say, you have one more turn of flooding before it gets flooded and locked. And you were like, no, I think what'll happen was Storm will come down, Legion will copy it, next turn it'll lock down. And I was like, I just don't think that's going to work. Well, come to find out, Glenn confirmed today after I know I hit him up in the creator chat and was like, hey, can you confirm this? Because nobody really knows the actual answer. And he did confirm the way you had originally had said it is how it's going to work. So Storm comes down on 4 because he's a 5, right? Storm comes down on 4, changes it to flooding. Your next turn would be your last turn of playing. And if you Legion that location, all the locations turn into that. In the following turn, turn 6, they will be flooded. They'll be locked out. You will not get a turn 6. So we've all gotten used to this whole magic world of turn 7s on 90% of our games. Well, guess what? We may be doing turn 5 games for a while if people like to mess with this combo. Now, did I say it correctly? Now that we've made it through the whole conversation, you said it correct the first time. I corrected you, but I miscorrected you. And you were correct the very first time of, yeah, this is going to be a problem with Storm.
Okay. As much as I love that you are admitting that you were wrong, you are incorrectly admitting that you were wrong.
Okay.
Because I am on record in that. Go back to the creator chat.
So I was
you were
right.
Referencing. Go back to the creator chat that you are referencing. And it is in there from today, where I believe it was to Cool or someone else in my Twitch chat on Friday. I forget, or maybe it was over the weekend for the Battle Arena. I can't remember. It was, I fully explained the way I read it and the way I understood it because of the location mechanics. I was saying that if you stormed on 4, Legion on 5, the other 2 locations will still be in the flooding state for turn 6, so they would not have closed. That was my explanation, and that's what I also explained to the creator chat. Within an hour later, we got the response finally from Glenn Jones explaining, and I quote, if you Legion on flooding, the new ones will mirror the original, so all 3 will become flooded at the same time. The reason that we had thought this previously, where I was egregiously wrong, was mirror dimension, copying another location on turn 4, right? Mirror dimension won't do that. It's a weirdo we're still poking at due to unique timing, kind of like what the old Sakar did. Yep. So that was our reference point to understanding the progression of changing and duplicating locations. I was wrong. As much as I would love for you to enjoy...
Last correction though.
As much
I'm talking about a month ago on the podcast. So like a month ago
yesterday.
I know.
This past 3-4 days.
But I'm saying like a month ago on the podcast.
I don't know. Somebody find it, somebody quote it, because somebody clip it and send it to me.
I'll
I have
find
no
the
idea what you're talking about.
But on the podcast, you were correct. And I was the one that gave you the wrong information on that podcast. And therefore I believe I had changed your mind.
Definitely got to find it.
Yeah.
Please.
I think I changed your mind on that podcast.
You convinced me the wrong way.
Yes.
You actually convinced me the wrong way because, see, I barely, I am like a small little goldfish in this giant pond we call Marvel Snap, and my memory is very similar. But I can remember about a week ago. You saying I said something a month ago?
It was like a month ago. It was either, it was when we were looking at spoilers, whether it was the podcast or Wednesday Night Snap. It was one of those. We were chatting about it. I correct you incorrectly.
Whatever the hell it was, I don't know. Anyway, the point is, Legion is now potentially busted because now we have this new mechanic we have to try to navigate around, which is at least for like the next 2 to 3 days, because those who decide to get Legion are going to overspam this, which is the Storm on 4 into Legion on 5 trick and trying to shut the game down. And it's a really...
I think it's a bad idea.
I think it's a mildly hazardous idea. And even Glenn's admitted it. They've said that this is obviously a potentially powerful interaction and we'll be keeping a close eye on it.
But see, I don't.
Here's the thing.
I don't think you can get enough
it's a very
power.
Powerful interaction.
Right,
Now,
but I don't think
say
it's going to win you a game.
actually full of power. Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's the thing. The idea that it can shut down and lock lanes outside of Jeff the Baby Land Shark, that it can completely lock these lanes. That's the, oh, we have something to worry about here moment. Because I am expecting actually a mild variation of chaos where it's creating location lockdown uncertainty. I'm expecting people to be really cheeky, annoying assholes and go storm, save for 4, sure. But in some other lane, magic on 3, storm on 4. Now what do you do? That's what I'm expecting to see. I'm worried that you're setting up the false idea and getting people to try to outplay their hand because they're afraid that it's going to lock down on turn 5. And then if you don't Legion, well, now they've, probably thrown off their rhythm. But if you do Legion, you lock it down. So the inconsistency of that could create its own deck type, because that specific combination is incredibly powerful and intriguing. Think about it. Magic on 3, storm on 4. You're setting up the unknown.
Yeah, but you're
and
also
I really like that.
You're also going in with a very weak power. So like think about cards, and I'm sure we're going to get into a lot of this as we go through, right? But the thing is, when you think of cards like Nebula, when you think of cards like Sunspot, a lot of these 1-drops, like, so if you're going to do this with a deck, you're going to have to play the most powerful 1, 2, and 3 drops. And if you're using, Magic as your 3, you've got to have a really strong 1 and 2, and it has to be Nebula, it has to be Sunspot, it has to be what's like our best 2-drop. There's not many. Yeah. Silk. I mean, so it's like you're having to do some of that stuff in order to guarantee that win, because if they're playing the better 4-drops, they're playing like Darkhawk, they're playing like, Zabu into Rockslide into Darkhawk, like you're going to win a lot of lanes with that. So I don't know. Yes, it could be strong, but I also look at that and just say, like, I think it's a worse Galactus. Like, that's kind of what I look at as, like, I think you're surprised I'm going to do this. I'm going to lock down. You're going to do whatever. Like, I just feel like there's much bigger, powerful plays you could be doing. Will people do it? Yes. Just like the Kang combo, infinite, whatever, like all of that stuff, right? People saw you could do it and they did it. So people are going to do this. But will it last after a day or two of losing a bunch of times? No, it'll go away. So I don't know. There's a lot of stops to it.
I agree that I think that this is temporarily niche and people are going to abuse the hell out of it, and then it'll disappear, and then somebody will bring it back in a tournament randomly in some weird ass configuration kind of a thing. And as we looked at, some of the locations that would benefit, that won't benefit, that just kind of are really not doing anything for everybody, like, you come to start to think about how much synergy he brings in at 5'8", because like I said, he's not Shang-Chi-able, but he creates a very unique situation, because there's a lot of uncertainty in regards to him. Right now, people are on one of two fences when it comes to Legion. There's about an 85 to 90%, in my opinion, looking at, everything that we're reading everywhere, opinion that Legion is a complete meme, and he'll be niche, but not very heavily useful. And then there's about a 10% of the community population who's going, he's going to surprisingly break the game. And almost nothing in between.
I think when it comes to featured location times, he's going to be really good for the surprise attack of changing locations where you want. For the overall, a conquest, a whatever, you can bring them, but honestly, like if I'm doing something similar in that with a lockdown, whatever, like if you're in a lockdown deck with Storm plus Legion, you're 100 times better of bringing Professor X, bringing Spider-Man into that slot rather than Legion, because you still have the ability to do something on some other lanes with powerful cards within that. Again, will it be a deck? maybe we're going to have to see kind of what some people do. There's definitely things you can do. Again, you could do that magic on 3 to bring that false whatever. Then you could turn around and do, 4 with Storm. You could also play a Nebula, a Sunspot if you didn't get them early game into that Legion to lock out the locations. But I don't know. We already talked about this last week. I think Surfer is going to be one of the bigger decks coming up. There's a lot of cards that can interact with Legion, whether it's Cosmo, if you can predict where they're doing it. There's Wanda. There's, the Reality Stone, because Thanos is making a rise on there. I mean, I think about the fact of like Thanos, like, sure, if you're going to Legion and try to lock down stuff, Lockjaw Thanos has probably already beat you. Like, they've already started to do all of their weird stuff, and they've already had enough power on the board to where that little cute gimmicky play is probably not winning you 2 locations. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what people want to do with him. I still think he's a meme card. I don't think he's going to be like this busted deck. I don't know. It's kind of weird, but like I kind of see him like a Jean. Everybody thought Jean was going to break the game. She's good, but she isn't game breaking. And I think he's going to be very similar. Like there's definitely going to be any of the locations that give like -3 to all your cards. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, I have Luke Cage in my deck. And now I've just got a huge step up on all these different locations. So I think that there are situations, but because locations are not predictable, unless it's a like a feature location or hot location or whatever, I just feel like he falls into this thing to where COnquest, I think there's so many better 5-drops that are more predictable, like an Iron Man, like a Professor X or whatever, that's going to help you out a little bit more.
I think there's one card when it comes to Legion in particular too that people are not talking about that will at least for the next couple of days will be incredibly important. And no, it's not Snowguard, because Snowguard's obvious, but it's not Snowguard. And I think it's a more important card than Snowguard. I think it's Ghost, because I think Ghost presents more of a synergy to Legion and anti-Legion decks over the next couple of days. Because if you are running Legion, you need to go second. Yeah. You want this to properly execute a certain way, have your location pop off.
Maybe.
If you are on defense, you want Ghost, so you can try to go second, so you can outdo whatever they're attempting to Legion. Because if they're going for the Storm into Legion combo, and then in 2 other locations you play, Scarlet Witch and Storm as a counter, at least for the next 2 days when Legion might become prominent, having those in your deck, for example, you at least then don't leave a location locked, or Rhino, any of those. Hell, even go Snowguard if you really want to, but like, you get the idea. That I think that priority shift is valuable.
Yeah. So here's the problem that I have with it a little bit. Defensively, yes. If you have a card that you can 1000% change the location, yes, you want to go second. If you're trying to do it with a Cosmo, I mean, this is obvious stuff, but if you're trying to do it with a Cosmo and you're predicting it, you don't want to go second. So I think it depends on how your deck's built. I think the same goes for the Legion side of it. I almost feel like you always want to go first, because at worst case, you're closing out the other 2 lanes. Because I think what's going to end up happening is if you go, and then you're going to play like a Doctor Doom, right, on your turn 6.
Yeah.
Because I think the problem is if you go second, you're opening yourself up to them changing it beforehand. So them changing it to Limbo, them changing it to Ruins with Rhino or whatever, Wanda, whatever it may be. So I almost feel like in the Legion decks, probably 90% of the time, you're actually wanting to go first, because worst case, you lock out 2 and they change the 1. And you should have some type of, potential good turn 6 play to make sure you at least win that lane as you go. Because this can be important. Like when you're doing this play pattern of 4 and 5 in 1 lane, like you have to make sure you're 1 through 3. You've already won the other, at least 1 other lane, if not the 2 other lanes, right? Like, and I think that's gonna be the difficulty with Legion.
I think the bigger the synergy that people are also not talking about with Legion is how powerful his effect is going to be specifically on turn 6. Because watching him change locations and yet alone multiple locations, there could be some really big plays that come from changing everything on turn 6. Because at least he's got some decent power. He's got a good 8 power to him. He could be enough to shift a lane. Maybe you Shuri him, you go like that, right? But if you're playing, let's say, I'm just throwing hypotheticals out there. If you're playing an ongoing deck and Onslaught Citadel pops up on the board, you go ahead and Legion that. All of your cards are going to benefit from that, deck because of the style of deck you're running. So there's that swing also to factor into, like you said, for the feature location days. I very heavily agree with you that he is a featured location day card. He is hey, we need more of these. Let's play into it heavily. And it's a stagnant ability. It's not a on reveal necessarily, unless if you're building for those on reveals. Like I said, with the Wakandan Express style location where it reveals, boom, thing happens. Kamartage, you want those down as early as possible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
So I think he's going to be a cheeky card, but I just can't see him breaking the meta. Even if you take a look at some of the really awesome combos. And I got to give credit to Drew Berry because he did an absolutely fantastic job of putting up this great graphic. You can find it on snap.fan he went through all the locations and just put up, at least currently to the time of this recording, all the locations and said, here are the ones that are, crazy combo locations that are just kind of meh, they're neutral. They are what they are, whatever. And then locations that could absolutely disrupt people up. Like the idea of switching everything at the last minute to bar with no name is hysterical to me. Absolutely hysterical to me. Just like, here, let's just throw them all. Oh, you're winning? That's cute. Bar with no name. There's literally nothing you can do. So I really enjoy some of the disruption options in there. I think the craziest one, as I sat here looking at the crazy combo list in general, because remember, even with Expedition, the earliest you could play him out is turn 4, let's say, right? Even with Expedition, I think that with the right timing, technically, I think the Raft is going to be absolutely nuts. Because if you've positioned your deck and your lanes right, in the right order, and then they reveal on the Raft, I'm curious how the Raft would proc if it's on reveal or if it's from the play side. So I'm looking at that one. I'm looking at things like Weir's Island, of course. Project Pegasus. Talk about a crazy turn 6. Just play out your entire hand. Everything you want in the world. Just here's all the energy for turn 6.
Yeah.
You're going to have 16 to work with.
Well, and technically that means it's already procced once. So you probably had it proc on turn 2 or 3 and you just played them. So your next turn, you had a whole bunch of energy anyway. Like, I definitely think that there's going to be some crazy combos with him. Again, it's just so difficult because you look at this list, right? You look at how many crazy combo locations are there, and then when you figure there's quite a few when you think of the overall, right? Like, let's say a fourth at the minimum, right? A fourth of the locations he's going to work well with, but then you also have to look at that and go, okay, well, he works well with this as long as your deck looks a certain way. So now when you go, okay, my Legion looks like this in this deck, now we're down to 4 locations. Really, really are crazy combos with them. So then it's like, okay, well, how often am I going to see them? So I love, and I think we were chatting about this earlier, it's going to make for some amazing YouTube shorts, TikToks, whatever, of look what I mean, just like when Rickety Bridge came out, and I know one of the first little shorts I had made was running Doc Ock on Rickety Bridge, and then literally just throwing down a Wolverine, and Galactus or whatever. There's some crazy stuff that happens, but I feel like that's where he's gonna live, in my opinion. Again, not saying he's bad. I think he's okay. I just really think that in order for him to be more effective, more efficient, he needed to be a lower power. But I also understand, or a lower cost, but I also understand that making him a 3 or a 2 or whatever. I mean, I guess it technically he'd need to be a 3 or 4 so you could see all locations, but like I think he may be too good at that point because of Storm, because of some of these weird combos you could do. But like I do feel like he would be much more effective if you could throw him down one turn earlier and take advantage of some of these. Because again, I mentioned Carmontage earlier. Like, yeah, if you could get him down early on 4 and change everything to Carmontage, you could do some like crazy stuff no matter where they tried to lock you out of. But yeah, I don't know. Or I mean, yeah.
Just remember this, okay? On Wednesday, the new location, Lake Hellas, appears. So that's where 1-cost cards here have +2 power.
Yeah.
You Legion and then zoo deck that shit.
I mean, are you not just playing Killmonger in every deck you play during that time frame? And you're like, that's funny. Boom, turn 6 Killmonger, goodbye board.
Yeah. Turn 2 Armor. Turn 3 Mystique. Turn 4
that's just gonna happen.
Patriot. Turn 5 Legion. Turn 6 Ultron. Go.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Now there'll be
Ultron to save the day.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, so cool saying like play armor. Like, I get it. I get armor saves you one thing, and yes, you could Mystique your armor, but yeah, I don't know. We'd have to see. I mean, the combo. I mean, even when you say like Ultron, you really could even do like Shayna, Khazar, you know, and things like that. Like, there are plays you can make.
Yeah.
To get your 1-drops down. I'm just saying in general, like, when that location comes up, you better have your armor. You better have drawn your armor. You better have drawn
Ghost.
Cosmo.
I'm telling you, she's influential.
You better have drawn everything you wanted to draw, because Killmonger is going to ruin your day. So
yeah, I think either way, I think it's safe to say that Legion's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think
at least for the next 48 hours.
Yeah, and I think the other thing when you think of this, and we've talked about this, right? Like, when it comes to the spotlight caches, it comes to the week of cards, you need to be looking at the full week, right? Do you want to get Legion? Do you want to use spotlights? Do you want to get the other cards? Are you missing High Evo? I mean, High Evo, a big bad. He's not coming down. He's big tokens. He'll always big tokens. So this is going to be another one of those good weeks if you don't have High Evo. If you don't have Darkhawk, Darkhawk is still a huge staple in the format in decks. And so when you're looking at this stuff, this is a pretty good week to use spotlights if you don't have these cards. But if you have these cards, like myself and Guest here, it's a good week to use your tokens, because Legion is a Series 4.
Yeah, just 3K, you know, and thank God he's not a Series 5. I'd really hate to try to even think about 6,000 tokens to get Legion, but
yeah,
who knows? I mean, we could be pleasantly surprised and have the 10% of the community that think he's a busted card. You know, we could be pleasantly surprised, and those people get to say, I told you so. And when I see it happen, I'll then concede. But until then, I think he is a cheeky play that will have very select use cases, like you said, for things like featured locations. And maybe like you want to catch people off guard in something like COnquest. Yeah. I could then see that. But I don't see him being a ladder staple yet. I think until someone breaks it.
Yeah. And I think the other hard thing is when it comes to like COnquest with them, as soon as you do it, now they're looking for it, right? Like now they know you have it. So it's a lot harder to pull that kind of lock off. It's going to be a lot harder to get 8 cubes out of that Storm Legion combo, right? Like, yeah, you may get it on that game 1 and you made everything, I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Nexus or whatever it is, right? Like, and it wasn't the Storm combo, it was just something else. And you caught him on turn 6.
Don't even say that. How is that going to work? Left to right and then just complete chaos.
Yeah, it's pretty big. I've had it happen, not all 3 locations, but I had one location copy that before, and I even had like Iron Man on one. It was really weird, and it goes up a lot further than you think it goes up. But yeah, but then it's crazy because everybody's does, right? But it's 2-sided. But Yeah, I think that that's going to be some of the stuff that you may be able to sneak a couple wins off of, like changing the locations, like I mentioned with the Luke Cage, and making the one where it's like necrosis or whatever it is that gives everything -3. That one's pretty rough. If you think about the fact that's -12 if you have 4 cards on every location that you're having to battle back through a Luke Cage on the other side of the field. But yeah, so I just want to point it out again. We've made these statements before. If the card is a Series 4 card, if you don't really need the other cards, use this as a recoup week. Use this as one of those where you can get more caches saved up for the following week or the week after, whichever week you're targeting for, and just use some tokens. Save them up, 3,000 tokens, and use them. And hopefully in the future, we'll get some better cache stuff as we go through.
All right. So with that said, Legion, I don't think is going to be meta breaking. And I think there's going to be a couple people who try to catch the whole world off guard this upcoming weekend for the Snapdot Fan Open. We were hoping to maybe see a whole bunch of Echo this past weekend because it's the new card, and Ongoing did really well the weekend beforehand, to say the least. So let's take a look at the tournaments that happened on Saturday and Sunday real quick, and take a look at the decks that actually did well, because Battle Arena had their second tournament, 128 person tournament. That I've finally got an opportunity to cast over there. Just my schedule for the last several months had been really awful on Saturdays. So finally had an opportunity to cast over there with Boulevard once again. Now it's our second or third time at this point. Absolutely love casting with him. He's a great commentator, and just it's a consistent joy to be able to have the chance to cast. And as we cast the event, I was peeking in regularly throughout the event, and it was very obvious and very clear the prevalence and influence of the prior week, where W came on in with that Thanos control deck. Spider-Man and all of the 5-cost chaos, right? There was so much of it this week. Echo or no Echo. First off, no Echo made it to the top 8, so that made me sad. But 3 Thanos control decks, all basically 1 card, if not 2 at most, different than the W's deck, made it into the top 8. And we had some big surprises along the way. And the Thanos control variant right now is incredibly powerful. So if we take a look at the deck that won, okay, this is Swen's deck. And this is basically W's deck, no Luke Cage, sub Super Skrull. Which makes 1000% complete sense. It's Psylocke, Jeff the Baby Landshark, Cosmo, Super Skrull, Shang-Chi, Iron Lad, Blue Marvel, Devil Dinosaur, Professor X, Claw, Spider-Man, and then Thanos. And here, let me throw all of the really strong ongoings. Let me take Iron Lad, who can turn into a strong ongoing. Let me take Shang-Chi, who can just straight up fist you into oblivion. Let me put Psylocke down here so that or the Time Stone can get one of the 5 drops also down on turn 4. And then I can lock you down with Professor X or Spider-Man, or then I can lock you down with something from Thanos and just ruin one of the locations at the last minute. Like, it is wild seeing how strong this deck has been now back-to-back weeks. And with the Super Skrull kind of play, I mean, it makes perfect sense because Luke Cage has always kind of been there as okay, well, we may hit, a hazmat whatever deck. We may hit the high Evo deck, but honestly, like, the high Evo decks are starting to kind of go away a little bit. Not to say they're gone, but, with some of the changes that came down, not just the Hulk, not just the Wasp, but like over time, we had Lockjaw, we had a lot of these cards kind of get touched on over, a month plus period. And we've seen Lockjaw kind of disappear. It's still there. You still hit a Lockjaw deck every now and then, but where we used to see it all the time with Thanos, he's not in a lot of the decks because you can only throw in 1 stone per turn. So you're only getting 3 cards, changed potentially. So it's one of those things where the deck has shifted. And because of that, Luke Cage is great, but he's not as needed. But by putting Super Skrull in here, hey, if they have Luke Cage, you have Luke Cage. If you think you're hitting up against this deck,
man, now you've got an extra Devil Dino, you've got an extra Cosmo. Potentially, again, you do have to make sure with Professor X, you're realizing where he's going. But the fact that you're probably anticipating after W's win the week before that you're gonna see more of these decks, and Super Scroll just gives you one extra of every card in their deck, which is pretty insane. So I love the inclusion of Super Scroll in here. I feel like he's one of those cards where we see him for a week or two, he disappears for a week or two, people forget, he's really good when ongoing's a thing, and then he pops back up. So I'm glad to see him in the deck. The deck is just, it's got so many lines, it's so good, and it's just hard to beat.
I will say though, as I'm thinking about it, I think that this week in particular, I don't know who to take out, but I do still think this week in particular, you actually are very heavily going to need Luke Cage specifically. I don't know who to take out though, because I think you need Super Skrull and you need to put Luke Cage in here. And the reason being is because of what we just talked about with Legion. The fact that this week, so many players are now going to get that access they've been waiting for to get High Evolutionary. And I'm expecting a lot of people in the tournament scene who haven't had High Evolutionary to finally be like, okay, I could finally get High Evo. I'm bringing it. I know this deck does well. It did well in tournaments, even with the adjustments and the nerfs. And I'm expecting a rise in High Evo again. We're going to get a wave of High Evo players. With all due respect to all of those new players, we're going to get a wave of very green, I think is the polite way to turn it, to verbiage it. Very green players to High Evolutionary, and a lot of players, again, getting Darkhawk for the very first time. So I think, keyword, I think that there is some other teching that we could do within this deck. Like if I was going into the tournament this weekend in particular, I would be scrapping Iron Lad and Cosmo specifically for Rogue and Luke Cage. I would rather double up in different ways with the Super Skrull and the Rogue, because I think ongoing is going to be just that much more prevalent this upcoming weekend, and the counters will be needed. I could make a case for Devil Dinosaur instead of being one of those to take out, but everything else I really truly like in this deck. And after having seen it piloted by several different people over the last couple of weeks, you can see how many mind games you basically end up playing at any given point. I love that with this deck for tournaments and Conquest, because you always have outs.
Yeah. I think
it's just a matter of which choices you make.
Well, and I think with this deck, like the one thing that I do like about it is I do feel like this is a deck that anybody can pick up. I'm not saying you're going to be an expert at it, right? I think that this is one of those decks where you look at it on paper, it's pretty obvious what you need to do and what you're trying to do. You can probably play it and win a handful of games and do well with it. But it's also one of those decks, like you're mentioning, there are certain play patterns that when you get to that expert level, when you get to the people that play Thanos all the time, that understand how you want to use the stones, leveraging some of these different cards, you're going to be able to play this and get to those top 8s, get to those top 4s. And so it's one of those things, the more you play it, the more you're going to realize it, right? So again, a normal novice type player, they're going to see stones, Blue Marvel, Dino. Oh, this is easy. Throw stones out, Blue Marvel, make them better. You're drawing cards, so I got a big Dino I can throw down. But it's when you get to those little nuanced plays of, when do I play Professor X over Spider-Man? When do I play Claw, and where do I play Claw in order to steal that win? Like, that's the part where if you want to play this deck a lot, you'll start to realize where those little, game curves are of, this is when I need to play that card, and you will start to beat people where they didn't expect it. They didn't just see, oh, he's playing a big Devil Dino over here, and all of a sudden Claw wins you 2 lanes because of the way you played them. So definitely one of those things to be thinking about it. If you're going to pick up the deck, you're going to try the deck. It is a great deck, but it is going to be one of those that if you're not really thinking through your plays and things like that, you may lose a couple games just because, that one play you didn't see was the better play, the more proper play. So
in a weird way, I think that this is actually the least interesting deck.
Mhm.
Of the tournament, in my opinion. I because we saw this deck the prior weekend.
Yeah.
It's a good deck. Clearly, it works. The fact that their opponent, Jeet, did as well as they did with the other deck, which is a Moon Girl She-Hulk Point Slam deck.
Yeah.
This was a really interesting deck to watch get piloted. And I was able to sneak back in and watch some of the gameplay for this specific deck. And it's Sunspot, Misty Knight, and by the way, this is a high Evo deck as I'm saying through it. Sunspot, Misty Knight, Quinjet, Armor, Jeff, Magic, Cosmo, Cyclops, High Evo, Moon Girl, She-Hulk, Hulk. So evolved wise, having Misty Knight, Cyclops, and Hulk into the deck from the High Evo, and then having the Moon Girl synergy built into this. This is basically like taking the Infa-She-Not version of the deck, right? Except you're not playing Infinite, you're instead playing Hulk, because you can play it no matter what. There's no reason to have to wait for anything
Skipping turns
in this deck. And it's a cool variation, and it was fun to watch this one too, because there were actually a lot more lines in it than I was expecting, as you're looking at when to Moon Girl and when not to Moon Girl. You know, when does the Cosmo Cyclops effect matter? When does Moon Girl of double Cyclops really benefit you on turn 5 instead? Where it was surprisingly strong. And I mean, clearly it did well. It made it all the way into the finals. So I think this deck is worth noting too, because you've got the Quinjet for whatever Moon Girl decides to double up. So you can just load the board with all those low cost cards. Threes are now twos, right? So you can throw down 4, 5, 6 cards potentially if you don't even have She-Hulk and or Hulk. And then just the entire board. Like, it is a very, very cool deck, and one that seems easy, but is definitely way more complex than its impression gives off, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. I think it's one of those things that when I look at this, I don't think high Evo right off. Now, it is a high Evo deck because you want your Hulk to have that special ability to be bigger than just the 12, kind of going back to that Infinite, line. So when you first look at it, you look at the top and you go, okay, this is where you play Moon Girl on 4, you skip, and then all of a sudden you play a Hulk, She-Hulk, whatever, like you would with Infinite. You've got Magic on 3, Moon Girl, and then playing a whole bunch of cards on your last turn. But to your point, when you look at the bottom half of the deck, I mean, Misty Knight, every time you're skipping turns with energy, you're pumping up your other card. Your Sunspot's going up. You're pumping that card up. You've got Cyclops, like you mentioned. If you have 2 Cyclopses off of Moon Girl, now you have for 5 power, you have 8 going down. If you're skipping with any other, turn with energy, now that's -4 on their side because both Cyclopses are triggering. So now you go from having 8 and then, skipping it's -4. So now you're at, 12 essentially. You skip another turn, and it isn't even a full turn. It's just you're saving 1 energy, which is also benefiting your She-Hulk. There's so many lines here, and I really do like what they've done. You've got the Cosmo, you've got the armor to protect those big She-Hulks, those big, Hulks that are going to be coming down a little bit later. And of course, I really think that what is making this deck so good is Magic. The change to Magic has opened up a lot of these decks that we haven't touched in forever. We're seeing, negative decks come back out of nowhere. We're seeing the Infinite decks because it's so much more consistent. Whereas before, you had to have Magic, you had to have Round 5. And that's what trapped your fifth turn, skip 6, play on 7. Now the fact that you can play Round 3 and know that I've got all this time in the world to set all my stuff up, know that I have a turn 7, it's been crazy. Now, again, we talked about Legion earlier. Legion's going to start taking away some of these turn 7 plays, and that may even just be the gift of Legion. Rather than having to use a Rhino or having to use some card like that, you can get rid of it with Legion. So maybe that's where we'll actually see him popping up this next week in some of these tournaments, because we know, which I'm surprised, I don't see any Surfer decks and things like that. And again, we're just looking at top 2 right here, but I'm surprised Surfer hasn't really tried to make that comeback yet. We're seeing it out there, but maybe they're missing the one card. Maybe they're still missing that one card to get up there. But yeah, I like the deck. I like the deck overall. It's a good take, and it's refreshing to not see a Thanos deck. We don't need Thanos dominating the meta like it did for a month. So
I will throw this at you though, and it's something. If you could put the other deck up back on the screen from
Sven?
our winner, yes, from Swen. Out of the 128 participants, we had 50 of them playing Cosmo. 50 of them.
He's back
playing Iron Lad. 51 playing Jeff the Baby Land Shark. And literally half of the field, 64 people, playing Shang-Chi. All 4 here in Swen's deck. Now, with that said, I want it to also be known that for each one of those 4 cards, Cosmo, Iron Lad, Shang-Chi, and Jeff, 40% of their presence was always within a Thanos-controlled deck, because that many people basically brought in almost a copy-paste version of the W deck in some way, because that's the one that won the weekend before and still incredibly strong. What interested me was looking at these 4 cards and the other decks that these decks were put into and how they all performed. The other incredibly strong decks that overall performed well that are not a Thanos deck over this past tournament were Darkhawk, good stuff, Patriot, and you saw a couple of people running Surfer, but not as many as I honestly thought there would be. I guess they all got shut down by the 50 Cosmos that they were interacting with. So maybe that was the case, but it was interesting seeing those 4 cards in particular, Cosmo, Iron Lad, Shang-Chi, and Jeff, be that prevalent. And it makes you want to think about, should you basically just be trying to build a counter deck that goes against those 4 cards?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Iron Lad is not as surprising just because he was in the spotlight caches, right? So more people are getting access to him in their accounts. So just like we talked about next week, having some more great cards coming into those spotlight caches. The following week, we've got more. So like, I think that's the other thing to look at is, was it 3 weeks from now, Galactus is going to be in the spotlight cache. So we're going to start to see some of these big cards kind of, come up and pop up and all that. But the other side of it is, I know we're going to have a future conversation around this when we start to talk about the real tournament scene, esports, all of that kind of stuff. But like, again, I've got to do this every podcast, right? Coming from Magic.
At least once.
The thing is, you hear the word called net decking. And so this is starting to become a thing in Snap. Now, it's always kind of been there. People have cards, they don't know how to use them. They jump over to snap.fan. They say, search decks, include these 2 cards, and they see what decks are out there with those 2 cards. Great tool. You can do that. But now we're going to start seeing that more and more when people say, okay, who won the snap.fan open? Who won the Battle Arena open? Who won, any of them, Snap Clash, whatever it is. And they're going to say, what are the decks that are winning each weekend? Because realistically, unless a brand new card came out that really counters that deck, or like you mentioned, someone else says, okay, what is the deck that beats that deck? It's going to do good. It's going to be a good deck because it was able to beat a whole bunch of people. Now, you have to know how to pilot it, which is where net decking comes down to being a good tool, a good way to do a deck, but you also need to know how to play it. But we're going to see more of that. I think that truly every week when these tournaments happen, people are going to look at those decks and go, hey, that's a great deck. Maybe I'll change 1 or 2 cards because maybe I don't have those 2 cards, or I don't think that card is as good as a different card, which kind of leads us into the next deck real quick, which is the Snap Clash deck. So in a little while, I'll do the deck of the week. I had no idea this deck existed, but I've got a deck that's very similar, about 2 cards difference. And it's a great deck. So in this deck, this is Ghost Spider, Korg, Spider-Ham, Zabu, Jeff, Killmonger, Shadow King, Darkhawk, Shang-Chi, Rock Slide, Iron Lad, and Dr. Octopus. So this kind of goes back to the whole Rocks and the Hawks, whatever you want to call it, type deck. This one specifically, I think, was man, I'm blanking on the name. I know you had it on your side. Octohawk.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, the deck name. Gotcha.
Yeah. From Tation made the deck, but it was Octohawk. I love that with Dr. Octopus and Darkhawk. But again, it's one of those decks where you're using your Darkhawk, you're using your Rock Slide and your Korg to get it up, to where he's a big power to deal with. You've got Doc Ock that really messes up, Surfer decks and different things like that when you're making them play before they want to play. You've got Killmonger for bounce. Like it's just got a lot of answers throughout the deck. So ignore on the screen the name up here because that is not the name. It wouldn't let me change it. But anyway, so it's definitely one of those that there's a lot of good cards in here. But to your point, we're seeing Shang-Chi in there. We're seeing Iron Lad. We're seeing a lot of those same cards that are just really, really good cards.
Yeah, they're just the staple, build around cards. You have Iron Lad, Shang-Chi, and Jeff. If you have those three cards, you already have a stable deck just from that much. That's it. So yep. I gotta say, it's a solid deck, and I love seeing the Doc Ock Ghost Spider synergy now with Ghost Spider being reduced down to a 1 cost of just here. Let me load all the crap into this lane, sacrifice it, or go ahead and Ghost Spider and swing it on in there if it's a weird secondary location. Like, there's some cool effects that they have built into this. And I mean, the power of Shadow King, more and more people are thoroughly enjoying, which is pretty relevant when it comes to your on reveal meta. But this is kind of leaning more towards an ongoing meta. So I was very surprised when I saw Shadow King in this specific deck do well.
Yeah. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about it when we get to the deck of the week because he was in my deck as well. But again, it's one of those things where you're anticipating the rise of Surfer, right? And if you can give them priority and then just literally negate those bonuses they just did on the lane, bounce, throwing it on an Angela lane, because Angela, Hit Monkey, whatever, and taking them back down, which now Hit Monkey doesn't go to 0, but you get my point. Bringing those back down is pretty crazy, and realistically in your deck it's not doing anything against your people because all your people are getting, your Darkhawk is a ongoing type thing. So I like the deck. I think there's a lot of good cards in here. I'll talk more about the 2 cards I don't have in mind. But yeah, it's good. It's a really good one.
I'm sitting here looking at the deck. I'm going, okay, if I'm default Dan for your deck of the week, I think I'm going to, because I don't know his deck of the week. If there's 2 cards that I think he has swapped out, I think it's Spider Ham and I'm going to lean at Ghost Spider for now.
All right.
I'm not certain about that.
You want me to tell you any of that or just wait till you see it?
No. Leave everybody, including myself, in suspense because, all of these decks, because they did well in tournaments, you're going to be seeing them in Conquest over the next few days. So I'm going to let you kind of lead into the Conquest conversation a little bit first.
Yeah. So when we go into Conquest, and again, this is one of those this is the topic I threw out. We talked about this on the podcast the other day. Sometimes we're just 5 minutes before this, we're throwing up ideas. And I wanted to touch back on Conquest a little bit. So last month was the first ever last week, not month, right? Last month. Last month was the first Conquest month, right? We got to go through. Yes. It wasn't a full month. We were missing a week or two. Everybody enjoyed it. We got to jump in there. Everybody was using it, playing it. This time around, it's been a little different. So there's a couple different aspects I want to talk to you about, get your opinions. And again, chat, everybody that's live, let me hear your opinions on this. If you're listening on the podcast, just, hit us up in the feedback, all of that, head over to the Discord, all that good stuff on over at snap.fans Discord. Let us know what you think on your opinions around too. But when it comes to Conquest, I mean, are you still excited about it? I feel like now when I try to queue into it, queue times are a lot longer. It feels different. I feel like I was super excited last month. This month, I don't know. I don't know about it. I really don't care about the avatar border. I don't know. What are your thoughts in general on Conquest. Then I'll bring up a couple other things they've tried to do to potentially help Conquest.
Yeah. I think with Conquest right now, like me personally, and again, I do not, my gaming patterns are not reflective of the entire community, both between being a content creator and just what I personally enjoy. I personally enjoy ladder a little bit more right now because for me, it is something that I am constantly aspiring towards doing better and better and better at as I look to, mess with my MMR, and I'm trying to, develop into a regular pattern of being at infinite and then day one of the new season within 48 hours being infinite again. And that's my commitment. I've pushed myself for this, which is why I'm sitting there at 95 regularly trying to get better at my own snap patterns, for example.
Yep.
Now, in regards to, looking at what happened last season and then looking at the constant feeling of people this season, it feels like, okay, look, I got infinite. Okay, sure. I'm going to go play Conquest instead. I think it's a better game mode. I have a more enjoyable experience there. Games mean more. There's good resources. There are different styles of battle and snapping. And people are like, okay, I enjoy Conquest more if I am infinite more often than not. If they're not infinite, they're still trying to climb the ladder because you're at least gaining resources from it. And okay, it seems to be a lean of if you're infinite or not. We're back to, 7th grade science with making a Punnett square, right?
Yeah.
If you are infinite and you are not doing well in Conquest, then it's onto your snap mechanics. If you are not infinite and you're doing well in Conquest, that's probably just personal choice then of which game mode you prefer. For me, I'm more of a ladder person at the moment. But the second I turn infinite, though, I will be hardcore, more of a Conquest person.
Yeah.
And I think one of the solutions, because people are complaining about the medals, which I can understand and I can justify from the perspective of Second Dinner, where medals are more expensive. Well, yeah, one, this is a longer month. Two, we have the time to work within that longer month to incentivize longer play durations. So yeah, we kind of have to fix also the broken system on top of it, where people were just grinding out the proving grounds exclusively.
I think that was the reason. Yeah.
That was a big reason. It was a big reason. And when you put it all together, yeah, of course it's different than the first season. Of course. You know why? Because they evolved. They learned. They adjusted. That's the right thing to do. So you might not like it versus the first month, but it's the healthier thing right off the bat. And I think with Conquest, the big issue that people are having with it is exactly the opposite of what I think Second Dinner was expecting, which was okay, we get to work for 3 weeks to get ready for the final week, and then we can use all our Infinity tickets. And what's happening is people are getting burned out after week 1.
Yeah.
And it seems like, okay, I got my simple rewards, and what's my incentive to play this the second or third week? So I think
there's a couple things to it, right? Like one, to your point, they upped all the pricing of everything. And realistically, it specifically was for this proving grounds issue. There was so many people last season. And again, they have the data, we don't, but a lot of what they were doing was just grinding proving grounds, because if you had 50 wins or whatever, somebody did the math, it was like 50 something wins, you could get everything in the shop and you never had to play silver. You never had to play gold or anything like that. And I don't think that was how it's truly intended. It's really intended for you to try to work your way up. And so I think the shift is fine on what they did. It does incentivize you to make you want to do gold, right? Because even silver, you get more tokens, but it's not that big of a shift, whereas gold really is. But yeah, I think that we're running into an issue where gold's all fine, but I'm really curious what's going to happen on the last week of Infinite, because this last time, again, people were excited about getting the avatar. It's the same reward as last month. Do you just need more Infinite avatars? I don't know. There's going to be a couple people out there that, yes, they want to get every single avatar with an infinite border, but like in reality, like it doesn't matter. There needs to be some better reward for hitting infinite. And in kind of going off that, talking about gold, this month they did this whole thing where, hey, if you get 10 wins a day, you get a free gold ticket. And that's a huge thing and a huge change from the other one. So like, I know with myself, I don't know, I've got like 10 gold tickets kind of sitting around between silver wins and this. Like, it's not a bunch, right? There's people that have way more than that, but like, yeah, it's just an interesting way that they said, hey, we want you to play more. We want to give you free tickets. Please queue up for gold for all these people trying to get their infinite tickets.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think it was necessarily meant in that sense of like, oh God, people aren't playing the game mode. Here, let's get some tickets to, force them or incentivize them to play the game mode. I just saw it as, I didn't see it as a desperation marketing mechanic, as a, here, let me give you something free to get you out, moving forward. You disagree. I get that, but I didn't feel that was the impression.
Next week, they're going to give away infinite tickets. I'm telling you, man, like, with the queue times in COnquest.
If they do that, then I'll switch. Yeah. If they do that, I'll switch. Like, but here's a simple answer. Every other week is infinite. Or at least call it twice a month if it's an odd month, where it has 5 weeks in it, right? It's either instead of it just being the final week of the season, had it be the second and the final week. No, not for 2 weeks, because people will burn out the same way. Oh. And then you'll end up with the same problem that they basically were trying to counteract by saying, here, let's give everybody, infinite in the final week of the month, because people were playing less in the final week of the month than any other time of the month. Now they have a reason to want to play in the final week of the month because they want that infinite ticket, that infinite border, etc. If they changed the window of infinite to being every other week, you're now creating a healthier cycle of 1 week of try to grind infinite tickets, 1 week of being able to use them and then maybe grind a little bit more. Go back to, okay, now I'm only in grind mode. Week 4, now I'm into, using my infinite mode. I think that creates a healthier want and release cycle. Very much so.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that now you open the door of everybody complaining like, I was halfway through a COnquest and then kicked me out because you can't do infinite anymore or whatever. Like, I think that makes it worse.
Same problem now.
No, because when it kicks you out, it's over for the whole thing. It's not, hey, this kicked me out halfway through, and then 2 weeks later it's opened back up. Like, I don't know.
Well, TFB, it's over. Like, it ends on this day at this time. It's over. I don't think it opens up an issue there, but what I think it does is it does bring up the conversation with COnquest of, it's not a bad game mode, okay? It's not a negative thing, because a lot of people prefer COnquest over ranked ladder.
I do.
Exactly. You're a perfect example of that. What I'm saying is, I think that there needs to be a different spice element rather than a very stale element. Because right now, if you look at the entire scope of the month, you have 1 day in which you gain new resources every week, because you've probably been playing COnquest all, week, all month long, whatever it is. And then, they finally opened up the week 3 rewards. Cool. Claim, moving on. Because you've been playing.
Yeah.
And then the final week, you get to use those infinite tickets. All right, really hard. Woo, let's go. And then, you did it. You got a rainbowy, shiny back border that you can barely see in ladder mode. Sorry, actually, in both of the game modes, because the game board lightened changing is actually making it harder to see those. Like, they need to change the infinite reward. I'm sorry.
I agree.
I think it would be great. I think they just need to have 2 different ones. That's all. And I think I have a really simple one. I have a really, really simple one, because it'll keep it a cosmetic. That's fine. But literally, all you need to do is say, here we go. Every other week is now going to be infinite. This is my solve for a second dinner, at least in my own opinion. Here's how you fix COnquest when it comes to the reward system, because people like free stuff, of course, but the whole point is for it to be not resources. So here's what you do. First COnquest, you give away not the infinite border, but a negatived avatar. So it takes your avatar of choice and negatives it. Just like Mr. Negative when you draw it out of a deck. So it goes to that black and like simple, I think it's like light, shiny teal outline version of your avatar that you chose to use during that infinite week for, we'll call it week 2 in this example. And that's your reward in that week. Then continue on back into week 3. It goes to normal cycle. Infinite is closed. Week 4, back up, and that's your infinite border. So getting 2 infinites in a month, you could potentially get the negative avatar and the border. And I think that double incentive creates 2 different needs and wants. And it's a unique thing that is already programmed into the game, which is just negative a piece of art. I think it's the simplest solve that people find unique, that people want to be able to enjoy, because I love being able to look at my negative cards, but the second you click them, they go back to regular size. Give us negative avatars every other week, alternating with this reward, and people will start drooling over, oh, this one's going to look great. This one's going to look great. I want this. Like, I think that's a really easy solution.
I mean, I would agree with you on the fact that that would give you incentive to care about multiple avatars and multiple art. But I still feel like the issue is COnquest is a grinder's mode, right? It's not the average player's mode. It's the grinder's mode. I'm going to grind for all this time to get that infinite prize. And the problem is a grinder wants to show it off. A grinder wants to, be like, hey, look at me. And the negative art is great. But month 5, why does it matter? Month 5, how do you know that I've done this 5 months in a row? Month 5, how do you know that I've done this 3 times this season? Like that's the problem they're missing right now with the rewards, is the people that are grinding it, they have to have this way to show it off. And so again, it's that type of stuff that's so much different. So for instance, going to Magic and Arena, in a Magic Arena, when you got to certain tournaments or you got to, certain levels and things like that, there were specific card backs, which is what we do in Infinite, but they were very prestigious. I was in this tournament and I made top 8. I got this back, and only these people got this back. So it still runs into this weird thing of like, when can I show them off? But like, if you had a card back that was each season a different card back, just like we have with Ladder that was in COnquest, that would drive people to make sure they got this infinite card back. Like it's much different than this. Hey, I've got a purple border that's slightly different purple than the one before, and you have no idea if I did it in season 1 or season 6. So I don't know. And again, I know card backs, that leads to a whole different thing where like people are like, well, I'm so upset because I can't hit infinite and I can't get the card back. But like, there needs to be something that's sought after.
I think a part of it too revisits an old idea that you brought up, which would be basically some kind of ranking system that would be displayed on your avatar. It shows up, for, all right, you hit an infinite this month and last month. So that means you're a 2-star avatar.
Yeah.
And you can only get 1 star on your avatar every single month. And so you can level up different versions of it, kind of like how we upgrade cards. You can upgrade your avatar, but it has like a star system. Or it's a ranking that, in COnquest exclusively shows underneath your avatar, just like, military version. Even if you took those rankings, because those are just as affluent in Marvel lore, just putting in, lieutenant rank, sergeant rank, captain rank, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Something along those lines that shows a ranking system of, hey, you achieved X amount of goals over the last X amount of time. This is your ranking over the last X amount of time, whether it's full historical or just over the last 3 months or something like that. I think that that's the solution. I think that it could be a part of the solution, which is, like you said, people want to show off how good they are. Rainbow, slightly opaque flare on the outside of an avatar border is not enough for the Marvel Snap community to justify, hey, I did a lot of work. Here's my reward. Ha ha, you don't have it.
Yeah. Because I think that there's one other change they need, right? So I think that that's the big one. You need something that gives you a drive to want to do it. And right this second, I can tell for myself and some people out there, like, it's not worth the time and effort to get to infinite when, you know, if you already have the border on the avatar that you use 24/7. Like, there's people that are just like, this is my avatar border. I'm always going to use this avatar border. Unless some brand new one comes out at some point, like, this is my go-to. I think the other thing that's bad about it is, you know, by doing and this is kind of the reason why I'm not a super fan of the negative, the inked, the border in general. I believe that the fact that you hit infinite is tied to your account. It's tied to you as a person. And I feel like whatever that reward is should travel with you. It doesn't matter if you change your avatar, you change your deck sleeves or whatever. Like, there should be something around you that says, oh, this is a good player, not just because they have last month's card back, right? Or whatever. And again, I would love a very specific card back. It would make me grind. I mean, when I first started the game in beta, like, I got some of the card backs. There was a season or two where I didn't really care. Because like, it's just a card back. I'm not going to use it anyway because I don't really like it. But then when they dropped the Venom card back, and I was like, man, I got to get this. Like, I grinded as hard as I could to get those sleeves for Infinite. So I think that if they did like a card back, it'd work. But the other side of it is, so kind of coming off of that a little bit of the grind to get something that showcases it. The other thing is the rewards. Like, when you look at those medals, yes, they've bumped them all up. But once you get your 9 purchases, once you get the purchases that you care about, the free tickets, the avatar, the title, whatever, like, there's nothing else. Like, yes, you could go get some free credits. You could go get some free gold. Not to say they're bad, but then once you finish all that, what are you doing? You're buying boosters. Do you care about boosters? Not really. But you got to use them, because if you don't use them, you get less boosters. So I think that we need like an infinite mystery card, or an infinite right? And it can be like 1,000 tokens. It'd be like 1,500 tokens. I don't care, but like, you need something that's like, I want to get these tokens and I want to use these tokens, because I know there's a lot of people out there that they've already accepted the fact that they either can't get the infinite border, or they don't want to grind for the infinite border, or they've already got the infinite border. And so now they're just like, I want to get my 9 purchases. I want to get my 2 free mystery variants that I can purchase. And I don't really care about the rest. And they stopped doing Conquest outside of, again, it's very good for your dailies and stuff. But like, I think that there has to be a better, like 1 or 2 better things in the store. And they did do well this season. We have 2 infinite tickets, 2 gold tickets, 2 mystery variants. Like, they did bump everything up because we had an extra week. But I still feel like there's not a good infinite spend with your medals for people that have 10,000 medals that they're sitting with. Like, I'm just going to get these random boosters, or these Mr. Sinister boosters. I don't know.
Something along those lines. I think Conquest overall is still a very novice state.
Yeah.
You know, it's still the very beginning of its lifespan, but I do think that it has room to grow, especially as we see, you know, the tournament scene grow and we see these highly competitive decks come to the game. Adjustments may have to be made for the future. Yeah. That's the light way to word it. Are you bringing your deck of the week into Conquest, into Ladder, or nothing?
Yeah, I'm bringing it into Conquest and Ladder. I'll pull it up. And again, kind of wrapping it up on that Conquest thing, I agree with you. I think it's a needed mode. It's a great mode that came to the game. That way, if you enjoy Ladder, you enjoy the more competitive aspect of Conquest, it's great. And it allows you to play different decks. So this deck is more so specifically for Conquest. My other deck I'm playing in Ladder right now is essentially the one we saw last week. We looked at it last week. It's the ongoing Ben Brode special that I'm just saying. I showed it off, and then the next day I saw like 4 other people playing the deck going, this deck is so crazy. Again, slightly different, but for the most part, the whole onslaught, Living Tribunal, Iron Man deck.
Iron Man.
It's amazing. So this time around, I know it says ongoing Thanos. Ignore that because when I edited my deck, it won't let me change the name. But this is the one I was talking about with the Darkhawk. And these are the changes, sir. You guessed Ghost Spider correctly.
One of them.
Ghost Spider, I changed out for Howard the Duck. So I've got Howard the Duck. Spider-Ham is still there. Zabu.
Yep.
Jeff. Magic. Killmonger. We've got the Shadow King, Darkhawk, Shang-Chi, Rockslide, Iron Lad, and Doc Ock. So a lot of really good cards in here. I kind of call this it has all the answers deck, because it pretty much has an answer to every deck in it. And that's where, like, again, before seeing the other deck that you sent me right before the podcast, was like, wait a minute, this is the deck I was going to show as my deck of the week, minus those two cards. And it's because you have cards like Killmonger. Killmonger really hurts the bounce deck. I mean, it's less effective now because Kitty's not the 11 power that she used to be, but it's definitely so good with Novas, Sunspots. And again, when we think of like Legion, in order for Legion to win, they're going to have a Sunspot or a Nova, or a Sunspot or a Nebula or something on the board. So Killmonger's going to be good there. I've got Magic to extend the game. The thing is, I don't have a 6-drop. So I'm already playing like whatever I want to on my turn 6. If I have Zabu out, it's usually 2 of my 4-drops. But having Magic gives me a little bit more time. And normally, your Shadow King's coming down on your last turn anyway. Your Killmonger's coming down a little bit later in the game anyway. So you really don't have a great 3-drop within the deck. So that's kind of why I have Magic in there, kind of extending it. And again, it's just such a good deck. I put in Howard because if you guys have never really played Howard in general, his knowledge, you knowing what you're getting next turn, you knowing what you're getting on turn 6, you knowing what Iron Lad's going to hit, makes Howard so good. So that information is just huge. And, knowing that I can Doc Ock and then I have a Shang-Chi as my next card coming up, pretty big.
Yeah.
But all in all, Korg was the other card that got dropped besides Silk. And I know that's a weird one because I have Darkhawk, but I truly just, I like Howard over that. And I just couldn't justify Korg over any of the other cards in the deck. And again, maybe over a Spider-Ham, but like Spider-Ham shutting down their 6-drop is pretty huge. And if you don't know, Shadow King will change that pig to a 0. So
yes,
it's
true.
It's good.
I will say though, something to contemplate if those are looking to build a variation on this deck too. The fact that Rockslide is in here with Magic is a very specific piece, because Darkhawk will scale to 8 power on a standard 7-turn game.
Yeah.
And he cannot be Shang-Chi'd. So if you're not running Magic and you're running a Darkhawk deck, running Korg keeps you under Shang-Chi level, unless if it's obviously, extraneous circumstances. They've added some kind of element or subterranea or something else happens. So knowing where that Darkhawk peaks at 4-8, if that's not your primary win condition, it's just it's a supplemental piece, is pretty strong. And this deck bodes very well towards here. Let me get a good, decent amount of power down in turns 3, 4, and 5. So I like that. I like that with this deck a lot. This is fun.
Yeah. So if this whole weird Legion meta comes up, you do have some answers with it. You've got Magic, who can essentially turn one of those lanes off as they're doing that, maybe catch the Storm lane prior to that. You've got Jeff. So maybe after it's all locked down on turn 6, you still got Jeff kind of hiding around. You can move him around if you need to. You've got the Killmonger, like I said, because they're going to have a strong turn 1, turn 2 play. You've got Howard being able to understand when they throw down their Storm, what am I drawing next turn? What's on the horizon? What am I going to do? There's a lot of pretty good answers when you think about that potentially being, the incoming meta with the deck. And again, if they're playing, I would have to look at it like this. If they truly are playing the Legion Storm lockout deck, they probably don't have 6-drops and stuff. So that Spider-Ham may be hitting their Legion if they're wanting to make sure they're, getting their curve on. They're only 6 in their deck is probably Chavez. which you won't see. So yeah, I like the deck. I think it'll be cool. It runs pretty well right now. I've ran it through just a handful of games, not too many, but a few of them. And yeah, it's had the answers. I think I have one loss with it so far, and it was my own fault for misplaying. I was like, they're probably going to do this. Nah, they're going to do this. And of course they did the first thing I thought about, but you know, but it's good. I like it. It's got a lot of really strong cards. And like I said, it just kind of has the answers for everything kind of tucked in. So whether you draw the top half or the bottom half of your deck, it usually does pretty well from there. So yeah,
it's definitely not a control deck. It's a counter deck.
Yeah,
specifically.
Exactly. If you like the Sarah, the old school like Sarah control decks, it feels a lot like that deck. There is no Sarah, but I think Zabu kind of almost plays that Sarah role with being able to get your 4-drops out pretty early, and being able to play 2 4-drops on 6 is always a good one. So
I mean 3 altogether if you got Zabu and Sarah simultaneously.
Yeah, that's true. I just don't know what I would change out, because again, this second I love the Doc Ock. There's definitely some matches that it feels bad, but like in general in the past when I was playing Doc Ock. But the fact is right now with the Nimrod decks, the Surfer decks, there's so many decks where they don't want you to play their cards out of order. Like even the Phoenix decks, Doc Ock just like goes, nah, sorry, this is how they're being played, and you don't get some of the stuff that you want with your triggers. Like I love playing them into like Angelas and stuff. So it's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun.
He's a good nuisance card. Even if you pull out the Shang-Chi and he gets destroyed, I still feel like he's a valuable card in general right now. One that I would not be surprised if randomly he just goes meta crazy. Like somebody uses him in deck that wins a major tournament, and everybody's like, oh my god, Doc Ock's the most broken card in the game, and then they nerf him, and that, like, I could see that pipeline happening for Doc Ock in some way, shape, or form in the future. When that is, well, we'll all have to wait and see now, won't we?
Yeah, no, he's definitely good. And the other side of it is, just for the last piece of Doc Ock, a lot of people are playing Cosmo right now, so just even getting a 10 power card is pretty decent when you don't even do anything and throw it into Cosmo. So yeah, I like it. It also allows you to kind of look and see, because you can get them early off that Iron Lad. You can look and see, like, should I just give up on that lane, or should I, Shang-Chi it on my final turn and actually win the lane? I won a lot of games that way, because you pulled, all their big drops they were waiting to play, and then just like, okay, turn 6, Shang-Chi wins me that lane, and I'll throw my Dark Hawk over here or whatever. So
we have a very interesting deck, a very interesting week ahead of us, and I am excited to see that right now everyone's kind of in status quo mode. There's no area right now that's in super outcry about change this or break this or this sucks. It's like there's always something to complain about. It's a video game community. There's always something to complain about to a certain degree, but it's not to the degree of like Shuri Red Skull hatred at the moment as it used to be. Like now everything's kind of leveled out. The whole game is in an overall a very healthy place, and we're now in a position where we can say, okay, let the next meta rise. Bounce has been nerfed. We watched High Evolutionary get nerfed. What is the next thing that will emerge, and will it still continue to be Thanos control? Will it become too much of an issue? Stay tuned, because I mean, between the Snap.fan Open on Saturday and basically all the fun cards that are coming out, including Mirage next week, but Legion, probably not Legion this week. I think there's a lot to keep an eye on.
It'll be Kang into Legion. It'll be Storm on 4, Kang into Legion to make sure you can get your Legion off. That'll be what it is. Well, just be prepared.
That's just mean. That's just mean. We shall see. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, for tuning in and listening to the Snapback podcast. Mr. Default Dan, tell everybody where they can find you.
Absolutely. So if you want to hang out with us live, like all these awesome people are doing right now, you can hang out with us over on my Twitch, twitch.tv/defaultdan. We do it on Monday nights, as well as any other gameplay we're doing. If you want to hang out with me and guests, we tend to be over on the Snap.fan Twitch channel on Wednesdays for Wednesday Night Snap. So if you're looking for some kind of dabble into some competitive modes, you can come hang out with us on Wednesdays, where it's just 4 rounds of Swiss. If you get 4 wins, you get money. If you get 3 wins, you get money based on our prize pool. So it's a ton of fun. It's only a couple bucks, but hey, that couple bucks may get you that pack, get you a little bit of gold, whatever you need in the game. And then from there, you'll be able to find us this weekend on the Snap.fan podcast. Or, wow, man, it is
so close.
Been a day.
So close.
So close.
You can do this.
The Twitch, the Snap.fan Twitch channel on Saturday, where we're going to be hosting the Open. We got a $600 Open. Just be prepared. It kicks off at 12, so make sure you are signed up and checked in Eastern. Signed up and checked in by, that 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern firing of it. It'll open up around 11 a.m., I guess, to check in. So make sure you checked in for it. We'll also be live over on the Twitch all day, along with some awesome casters joining us. So come hang out with us. Have some fun, try to compete, try to win that $600 prize pool. And if you make top 4, you will get your free ride over to the Snap.fan World Championship, like others have done on these tournaments before. So looking forward to that as well in January.
And as for myself, you'll find me there on Saturday as well for the Snap.fan Open. I'll be on the back end as well as casting at some point to be determined. But if you cannot find me there on the Snap.fan channel, please use this. This is just so much easier. Ready? linktr.ee. Just remember that. Linktree. Just put it dot before the E's. Linktree / ItsGuestGaming. That's how you're going to find everything. Literally everything. You're going to find my Twitch. You're going to find the YouTube. You're going to find the Instagram. You're going to find the TikTok. You're going to find the Snapfan articles. You're going to find the PayPal. You're going to find the all the above. You're going to find it all, because I tried to lump everything now into one place. I got to find an easier way to articulate that. But right now, just use my link tree, which will be in the description in some way, shape, or form below. So, Mr. Default Dan, thank you as always, and thank you for listening and watching this episode of the Snap Back Podcast, where you snap and we snap back. Default Dan, say goodbye to all the lovely people.
You guys take it easy.
Seriously, this beard thing, dude, is just like, whether you got jumped or not, it is
that hip squad, man.
I so desperately want to see your face upside down, because you look like an upside down Batman helmet.
It's the Wolverine beard.
I don't care if it's a Wolverine beard. It looks like Batman had a rough night out.